Could you forgive a killer if he killed in the name of justice? Could you call someone a hero if his job was to behead people every week? For over 40 years, one man in Germany ended more than 300 lives. Not out of vengeance, not from hate, but because it was his job. His name was Franz Schmidt. He didn't run from his past. He wrote it down, line by line, and left behind one chilling question for us all. If justice requires no compassion, then what keeps us human? No one expected an executioner to keep a diary, and even fewer imagined that his journal would become one of the most chilling and detailed records of justice in 16th century Germany. Franz Schmidt, a name mostly forgotten in history books, executed over 360 people during his 40-year career in the city of Nuremberg. But what set him apart from every other executioner of his time was that he documented every execution with unsettling precision. He wrote by hand. He listed the date, time, age, gender, crime, and method. No embellishments, no emotions, no mercy. November 18th, 1589, a 34-year-old man killed his father with an axe, executed by breaking on the wheel. Legs, back, arms broken, body displayed at the north gate. That was all. Nothing more, nothing less. Every working day, Franz Schmidt walked through the city under the weight of silence. No one spoke to him. Children were pulled away by their mothers when his dark coat appeared in the street. Even the guards escorting him nodded instead of greeting. Nuremberg was just waking up. Church bells rang over moss-covered rooftops. The market began to stir. But the largest crowd wasn't gathered around the food stalls. It gathered at the scaffold in the central square, where Franz Schmidt would do what he had done so many times before. The wooden platform stood tall. The execution block had been scrubbed clean. His sword gleamed in the morning sun. Beneath, the crowd pressed closer, nervous, eager, hungry for spectacle. Some brought children. Some brought bread. One man sold roasted nuts, smiling as business. Picked up, for many, death was just another public performance. The condemned was brought out, hands tied, head bowed. A priest walked beside him, whispering the final prayer. The laughter stopped. The crowd fell silent. Franz Schmidt said nothing. He checked the blade one last time, took his place, gave a subtle nod. The man knelt, placed his neck on the block. No words were exchanged, no second chances offered. The sword rose. One stroke, the head dropped. Blood ran along the grain of the wood. A few gasped, some cheered. And then, as quickly as it had come, the moment passed. Vendors resumed their shouting. Feet shuffled. Life moved on. The executioner stepped down in silence. No one blocked his path. Back home, he opened his journal, wrote a new line. Neat, cold, unshaken. February 7th, 1590. A 26-year-old woman poisoned her husband's child. Executed by beheading. Everything proceeded smoothly. Franz Schmidt didn't live in the shadows. He didn't hide from the city, but the city hid from him. Despite his service, despite his unwavering precision, Franz was never fully accepted as a citizen. He was useful, essential, even but always kept at a distance. The law depended on him, yet the law also cursed the role he played. His profession was one of blood and order, and the cost of that was isolation. He lived on the edge of the city, in a modest home, surrounded not by friends, but by silence. Neighbors averted their gaze. Some crossed the street when they saw him coming. Children whispered stories about him. ghost tales and curses wrapped in nervous laughter. No one invited him to feasts. No one shared wine or prayer. And yet, Franz Schmidt believed in honor. He wasn't a brute nor a butcher. He considered himself a servant of justice. In his own words, written in neat Gothic script across hundreds of pages, he saw each execution as a necessity, not a desire. He did not choose who lived or died. He simply carried out what the court demanded, with the steadiness of a craftsman and the detachment of a historian. June 24, 1587. A 19-year-old girl, theft and attempted murder, strangled at dawn, confessed and repented. That's how he wrote it. No mention of fear, no judgment, only the facts. But in the quiet hours after the crowd had dispersed, after the blood was washed away, what did he see when he looked in the mirror? There is no journal entry that answers that question. No line that says, "I regretted it," but there are hints, patterns, the way he began noting more than just crimes, small details about a condemned man's trembling hands, a woman's final prayer, or the way a mother wailed from the edge of the crowd in time. Franz began to take on a second role, one that few knew about. He became a healer. People who would never shake his hand came to him in the dark of night, asking for help. A child with fever, a man with a shattered leg, a birth gone wrong. And he helped them. They didn't thank him, but they returned. Over the course of his life, he is believed to have treated more than 15,000 people. The executioner, they whispered, had healing hands. Perhaps it was guilt. Perhaps it was purpose. Or perhaps, after decades of ending lives, Franz Schmidt needed to save a few just to feel human again. Not every sentence could be carried out with a sword, even when the sword still fell. Some executions left Franz Schmidt with an emptiness not caused by blood, but by doubt. He executed over 300 people, but not all deaths were the same. Some died furious. Some begged and wept, and a few made him pause just for a second before giving the signal. Not to spare them, but to remind himself that he still had to go through with it. August 12, 1593. A young man, 20 years old, theft and assault, beheaded, showed remorse, cried when his parents arrived to say goodbye. That's what he wrote. But the story was more than a few lines. That boy years earlier had once come to Schmidt's door, burning with fever. Franz had treated him, helped him survive. And now he stood on the scaffold, grown, trembling, kneeling before the same hands that had once saved his life. The sword still struck. One clean blow, as always. But that night, the journal remained closed. The pen hesitated. The page stayed blank. Longer than usual, there was no one to ask. No one to confide in. In the years that followed, something changed in the way Schmidt wrote. The entries were still precise, still clinical. But more and more, he began to note details that hadn't mattered before. The final look in someone's eyes, the last words they spoke, whether they resisted or prayed. February 9th, 1601, a woman poisoned her husband after years of beatings. Executed by fire, calm, said, "Death is easier than living with him." No one defended her. The law was the law. But between the lines, there was silence, a silence heavy with something unspoken, not sympathy, but understanding. And then there were cases where Schmidt believed the person might not be guilty at all, but he wasn't allowed to question. The court judged, he executed. That was the system, A man, convicted under forced confession, no witnesses, no admission, executed on the wheel, bled to death, no last words, no protest, just a note beneath the line, did not resist. Eyes fixed on me. Cases like these were rare, but they stayed with him. He never refused a sentence, never spoke out. But over time, through the quiet weight of his words, the cracks in his armor showed, because in the world where justice was delivered by cold steel, who would judge the one who held the sword? Franz Schmidt hung up his sword in 1617. No ceremony, no farewell, just silence. And a final line in a journal that now spanned hundreds of pages. The last, a woman, killed her own child, beheaded, wept greatly, said she could not live with her guilt. After more than 40 years of executions, his blade fell no more. But the world around him didn't change. People still avoided him. Though he had saved thousands through his healing hands, he was still the one who once killed. Though he had served justice with precision, he remained the executioner, a stain, permanent and unspoken. But Franz Schmidt did not accept that silence. He wrote petitions, letters to city officials. He asked for no riches, no medals, only one thing, to be allowed to live as an ordinary man. And one day, the answer came. From the highest place of all, the emperor himself, Emperor Rudolf II, issued a formal decree. Franz Schmidt, for his unwavering service and integrity, was cleared of all social dishonor and recognized as an honorable citizen. He left the city no longer did he lower his eyes at the market. No longer did people whisper behind his back. In his final years, he became a full-time healer. He traveled from village to village, treating the poor. No praise, no payment, just a quiet need to keep his hands clean. In 1634, Franz Schmidt died. No statues were built, no great funeral held. But his journal faded, handwritten across decades, remained. A haunting testament to justice, cold and methodical, in an age drenched in blood. Over 400 years have passed since Franz Schmidt delivered his final stroke. And still, history hasn't agreed on what he truly was. Some call him a legal killer, a man who executed hundreds, under the name of justice, a blade bearer. Without mercy, others see him as a guardian, the man who kept chaos at bay, carried out the law with discipline, and saved thousands more through medicine than he ever killed with steel. But perhaps he was neither. Franz Schmidt never wrote about his feelings. He never justified. He never preached. He only wrote, September 10th, 1602. A man convicted of robbery, executed successfully. No resistance. One line. One more death. And then the silence returned. It's that silence that troubles us now. Because no one knows if he ever felt regret. No one knows if his hands ever shook. No one knows if, among the hundreds of eyes that met his before death, there was one he could never forget. We want remorse. We want broken hearts beneath the executioner's hood. But Schmidt left none of that behind. He left ledgers, pages, and one final question whispered between the lines. If justice requires no mercy, who will teach us to remain human? Time may erase names, but true stories, like Franz Schmidt's, echo through the centuries. Like a blade that never fully disappears from memory. We don't look back at history to judge. We look back to understand. Justice, morality, and humanity are never simple. If you want to keep walking this path with us, exploring the dark corners and forgotten truths of history. Subscribe to Prehistoric, and don't miss what lies beneath the surface of time. See you in the next story.